All right, well, welcome everyone. We have a full house today. It's good to see. We do have quorum. So my name is Eric Geyer. I'm going to bring this meeting to order. This is the March meeting for the Jackson County Public Safety Coordinating Council. I asked Jasmine to pull up kind of a history of where we've been for the last 2 years. And when you look at the presentations we've been lucky enough to have for this group, there have been a lot of really timely and interesting presenters who've helped shape our thoughts around how we do this work here locally. And I think today continues in that, as we're going to have Joe Ferguson, our Deputy Director with Community Justice, present the Juvenile Crime Prevention Plan, as well as update us on the overall basic and diversion money we get from the state and how that is spent by our county. He'll give a brief overview of what juvenile services really look like. And then we're joined by 4 members from the Pathfinder Network who have been providing on-site services at the Transition Center and at Parole and Probation, and are going to speak about what peer delivered services look like, what their tools are that they supplement those services with, and what their overall goals are. So very lucky today with this full agenda. So our first presentation today is from Joe Ferguson, who, as I said, is the Deputy Director of our Juvenile Division within Community Justice. And it's also true that Joe has been instrumental on the state level of shaping where juvenile services have gone over the past 2 decades. He is the past president of the Oregon Juvenile Directors Association, and as it requires us to do so, he will be presenting on the Juvenile Crime Prevention Plan, as well as giving us some information regarding the Juvenile Crime Prevention Evidence-Based Practices Checklist and Basic and Diversion Services. So, Joe, I'll turn it over to you, and thanks for presenting.
Thank you, Eric. And thank you guys for having me here to present. If you have any questions along the way, Jasmine will be watching, because I'll lose most of you when I start sharing my screens. So as Eric mentioned, I'll just go through a little bit of an overview of our Juvenile Division kind of framework, all this, and then into the actual Juvenile Crime Prevention Plan. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. It got sent out earlier, so I'll hit some of the high points in terms of what we're using the money for and what services that pays for. So under our Juvenile Division, so we have currently 10 probation officers, and we split those up. 4 do our intake and assessment. So those are new police reports coming in. Probation officers meet with youth and families, go through those. They conduct a risk assessment, and then kind of determine which direction to go. Can we deal with those through diversion, or do we need to take them through court? And then we have 4 probation officers that deal with kids in the community. 3 of those are set up geographically. So we have White City out, including Rogue River, Phoenix, Talon, Ashland, and then Medford, and then a little bit of overflow for those. And then we have 1 within that does our specialized caseload of sex offenders. That's all they have on their caseload. And then the 2 diversion services, one of those is paid through the Juvenile Crime Plan funding, and the other deals with our violation, drug and alcohol cases, in addition to our diversions, or what we call our formal accountability agreements. So in lieu of going to court, they're placed on those diversion agreements. So we really look at a lot of different things in terms of what can meet the needs of the victims, community, and youth. And really the emphasis is on community safety, accountability, and competency development. So giving new skills to youth as they come through our system and leave better. And then based on risk level is kind of what the level of supervision and services. So the higher risk youth are the ones being placed on probation. Those medium risk youth could be either on our diversion or probation. And then those lower risk youth, really try to refer them back out into community-based programs, kind of out of our system to get those services. Our detention facilities, so we have 2 20-bed detention units, so a total of 40 detention beds. Currently, we are staffing about 16 to 24 beds, so really 1 unit. Our staffing ratio is 1 staff to 8 youth. And so currently what we're doing is during the week, we're staffing it at 16 beds. The weekends, starting swing shift on Fridays, and through the weekend, we can go up to 24. So youth that have been court ordered by the court to do court ordered detention days can do that on the weekends, and then if there was regular school, they would go back to regular school on Monday. Right now, it's either virtual or hybrid. We have a full-time education program offered, provided by the Medford School District. We do a 220-day education program versus the regular, so all the way through summer school, year-round. And then the kind of nice thing we've added additionally, the career technical education, the CTE classroom. So we have a laser engraver, a CNC machine, and a screen printing machine that we are now going to be utilizing through both the detention and our residential program. And then we've also moved to using Chromebooks within both of our detention programs. So youth that come from other schools and into detention, versus instead of just doing packet work, which has been historically what we've done, we have now moved to the Chromebooks so they could access the Medford School District curriculum and testing and things like that. We do daily recreation activities. We have daily evidence-based skill building groups. We provide active interaction and supervision by staff. They're on the floor with the youth, interacting all the way through their shifts. Our mental health and substance abuse services are provided by Options of Southern Oregon. We have a part-time mental health counselor that works in detention up to 20 hours, and then also the substance abuse up to 10 hours as needed for assessments. Our medical services are provided by WellPath, same as the jail, and then we offer daily visitation opportunities. Currently, those are fairly restricted because of COVID. So we have a couple non-contact visitation opportunities, and then we also have phone calls and Zoom as well for approved visitors. Our residential program has a capacity of 15 beds. We're currently staffing it at 10. So our ratios are 1 staffed every 5 youth, and that's based on our licensing and approval through Department of Human Services. They also have full-time education programs, same as detention year-round, and also the access the CTE classroom, the Chromebooks, and additionally through U715, they've developed a VOTEC program, so they do woodworking, welding, soldering, automotive. So they have some additional opportunities that our detention staff do, our youth do off-site. And they also have daily recreation both on and off site, the daily evidence-based skill building in groups and individual works, the interactive supervision by staff, and then also Options provides our mental health and substance abuse services over there at a much higher level in terms of treatment-oriented and medical services by WellPath. And then our youth are able to go off-site and have home visits as well with parents, guardians. Just some quick statistics. This is our 12-year data trends on referrals or police reports in youth. So that top blue line is our police reports. The kind of orangey line is our youth. We've had a steady decline for more than 12 years. That's a national, statewide, and local trend. As you can kind of see, this last year, we've had a slight uptick in police reports on youth. And so, you know, which is an interesting piece because even with COVID, we've showed a slight increase. Our last quarter of last year really fell off quite a bit because of COVID, but we were seeing some pretty strong other quarters on an increase on that. About 66% of our overall referrals are criminal. And to give some comparison citywide wise, is Medford accounts for about 58% of all of our referrals. So a little bit more than half now. It used to be about 50%, but it's crept up a little bit more these days. So. And then this is just our risk assessment. So that top one's our initial assessments and the bottom one's our reassessment. The blue lines are high risk youth. The red color is our medium and the green's low risk. Some interesting just numbers on that top one. On the initial one, 64% of youth demonstrate some school issues of either not attending or chronic absenteeism. 71% have peer or other relationship issues, 78% behavior problems, 54% family functioning issues, 39% substance abuse, and about 18% attitude, values, and beliefs. And then looking at, so those are the overall referrals. So every kid that comes in gets that risk assessment, and that's what those come out. If you look at the reassessment, those are kids on probation. And so every 6 months, we're conducting a new risk assessment to update that. And so that's why you'll see that the highest percentage of those are kind of medium risk. So again, those are our high or medium risk youth. But just number wise, so fairly similar on the school issues. It's about 62% that have some struggles in school. But then it jumps to 98% have peer or other relation issues. 100% of those youth have behavioral issues. 80% have family function issues. 80% substance use issues, and 49% attitudes, values, and beliefs. So again, those are our highest risk youth. So you would expect those percentages to be a little bit higher as well. You'll notice that we do have some low risk youth on those reassessments, and those would be youth that have been on probation that are now having their risk level reduced, and that's really what we want. And so, because I had mentioned about redirecting lower risk youth out to community-based services, and that's really what we continue to do. But the hope also is that youth on probation reduce their risk towards the end of closures. So this one just shows our dispositions, kind of what we do with cases. I know it's really busy, and really just wanted to look at the last couple of years in terms of things that have been going on. We've had an increase in probation. That's kind of that golden color. And so number wise, that's about a 27% increase, 1920 over 1819. And so again, our numbers may be going down, but the severity of offenses or the risk of youth has been going up. And so that's pushing more youth onto probation. That red color is our commitments to the Oregon Youth Authority for either out-of-home placement for residential or the youth correctional facility. As you can see, that's fairly consistent throughout the 12 years. It's been about 3 to 7% of what all of our overall cases. So again, that percentage hasn't changed even though our numbers have. So it's still those highest risk youth that have continued to either commit new crimes or failed to comply with probation conditions that have kind of moved them on through the system onto the state level. Probation's fairly consistent, the last several years on that. Our diversion cases, which is kind of that brown color, have been going down. And I would say, that correlates with our numbers and our reducing down of not providing as many services for low risk kids and trying to get them plugged back into community-based services instead. Our detention population correlates with our overall numbers of referrals going down too. You'll see there's been a slight uptick in our female youth over the last year, but over the last 5 years, it's stayed fairly consistent, about 100 youth on that. Our current average length of stay for youth in detention has increased from about 15 days to 18 days. So with less youth, some are staying longer. That number could be skewed a little bit. As most of you are all probably aware that we've had some pretty high profile cases over the last several years, multiple murders involving youth or serious offenses. So those youth stay a long time, up to a year or more. And so that will push our average length of stay up as well in terms of consistency too. So average population this last year had dropped down to about 14. Part of that was due to COVID. We restricted admissions just like the jail has in terms of more serious person-to-person offenses to try to keep the numbers down as well. So it would have been about 16 and 18 and 19 on that. Then our recidivism, which is a measurement of a youth committing or being referred for a new criminal offense to our department. So it doesn't have to be a conviction or adjudication. It just is a referral. And so we've done very well the last couple of years. We've continued a downward trend. We're sitting about 23% currently. In the state's about 29, and it's actually leveled out and has continued to have a kind of an upward swing in the last 4 years or so on that. So I think that, you know, the higher risk youth we are working with, we're doing a pretty good job in terms of them not committing new criminal acts on this. And then so that's kind of just the kind of quick update on terms of just services numbers and such. And so in terms of the juvenile crime prevention plan, the funding is administered through the Youth Development Division, which is a part of the Oregon Department of Education. And for those that have been around a while, this is really the old Commission on Children and Families that we used to have a local agency that dealt with all the funding come through, and it used to be a lot of money, and it's dwindled down to our current about $115,000 a year on that. And so each county has a designated agency. For our county, that's the Juvenile Division of Community Justice. And then each biennium, the plan has to be updated and then also approved by the local Public Safety Coordinating Council. So that's why I'm here today. The crime prevention plan funding is part of our continuum that we receive from the state. So these are the three funding streams we get from the state. And so this is what we've are expecting and are budgeted for our 21-22. The juvenile crime prevention is $115,201. And then basic and diversion services come through the Oregon Youth Authority. And I'll explain kind of what each of these pay for as well. So of that, just a little over $500,000, that's about 8% of our total juvenile budget. So it's very small, much different than what our adult division has coming from the state, which is majority of the funding on that. Our majority of our funding comes from the county general fund. So the juvenile crime prevention provides some alternatives to detention, some case management services, some behavioral and vocational skill groups, some transitional connection from when youth leave detention in our residential program back to an improved education program. So ensuring that they aren't dropping off on the education piece when they leave our facility as well. And then our basic services, that provides 2 full-time staff in our detention facility and also pays for our contracted medical services through WellPath. And then our diversion services provides 1 full-time staff for our probation, which is our sex offender probation caseload, and then also 2 full-time staff in detention, and then pays for our contracted mental health services in detention. The funding for our mental health services in our residential program is all covered through the youth medical cards. So as I mentioned, we have a standardized juvenile crime prevention risk assessment called the JCP. Again, that captures the risk levels of youth, and it's really used for a measurement of public safety on the likelihood of youth receiving an additional criminal referral within that next 12 months. So all medium and high risk youth is where we're using this money for in terms of looking at those areas off of the risk screening. So school relationships, behavior, family functioning, substance use, attitudes, values, and beliefs are those areas that captures. And then we're also really focusing on a strength-based, restorative, trauma-informed, and evidence-based practices approach on all the services that we provide. So in terms of what we use the money for, so we've renamed this. It used to be a couple different programs, and so now it's called A-STEP, which is Accountability, Skills, Transition, and Education Program. And so this really provides a staff member and also a skills trainer to provide an alternative detention. So youth that have violated technical conditions of their probation, have violated conditional releases from detention, or are currently on diversion agreements and are violating that, can be placed into this program. So it's really what we call as an after school or summer program. We run it Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. They get the cognitive vocational skills groups. We've been working with Medford School District to provide tutoring services and had that almost in place before COVID hit and schools closed down. So we're still working through the details of that. And then also the case management piece is really when youth leave our detention and residential programs, is ensuring that they're reconnected with the school district they were or where they live, of getting connected to that. So youth aren't dropped through, kind of lost through that transition period as well. And then we have a little bit of funds for incentives to reinforce positive behavior for youth going through not only this program, but also probation and our residential program as well. This is kind of what the money, the $115,000 is. So we currently have a probation officer assigned as our case manager. That pays for about 90% of their salary. And then we have a skills trainer that provides additional help and also covers for the probation officer if they can't be there. And then the tutoring costs, which would be through the Medford School District, and then incentives. So this would be our annual budget on it for the biennium. It gets doubled for the plan. All right, that's the quick of it. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thanks, Joe. Does anybody have any questions for Joe today?
I would just say that other than renaming our actual program to A-STEP, it's what we've been doing for the last couple of years. Probably the last year we've added the piece on the connection from with youth leaving detention in our residential program to ensure that connection back to their either their school district they came from or the school district they're currently living in.
I have a question now. So 66% of the referrals come in from the police. Is it schools and parents for the rest of it?
Those would be criminal. So the other ones would be non-criminal, so violations. So like our minor possessions would make up that difference. It also would include, we get referrals for runaways that really we can't take any action, but those are all things that are still sent to us. So of the overall referrals, everything we get is 66% is criminal in nature.
Thanks.
I had a question. It was interesting seeing the demographics, the gender demographics in kids. It looks like, well, the numbers are not dramatically different. The proportionality of females is growing. And I'm curious if you're keeping track of other demographics. I think in previous presentations, you've shared a little around race and maybe language, possibly others.
Yes, we do. And I just didn't show that just for the sake of time today, but yeah, we have all of that pieces, and it's all accessible on our website for people too. So we do the same 12-year data trends on those pieces as well. So we do it by age, race, ethnicity.
Do you know if you're seeing any other real shifts in proportionality?
No, they're all pretty consistent with percentages wise we've seen in the past. I mean, we still see a higher percentage of Hispanic youth coming in on that. But
well, if there are no other questions, I would entertain a motion to approve the recommended juvenile crime prevention plan as presented by Joe.
I'll make a motion. This is Jennifer to approve.
Thank you. We have a motion from Jennifer Mylenick.
This is Beth.
We have a second from Dr. Carter, Dave Carter down there. I saw he beat you to it, Beth, just barely. So, all right. Since we have not had any discussion on this, if you are a voting member, I believe, let's see, we are 31 deep on this meeting. Since we do need this to be, it's one of the 3 things we formally approved. Jasmine, if you wouldn't mind doing one more roll call vote to get us to the next piece, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Lieutenant Aldrich,
Yes.
Lee Ayers,
Yes.
Dave Carter,
Yes.
Chief Clausen,
Yes.
Commissioner Dotterer,
Yes.
Doug Engel,
Yes.
Chair Guyer,
Yes.
Beth Heckert,
Yes.
Barbara Johnson,
Yes.
Danny Jordan,
Sorry, yes.
Jennifer Lind,
Yes.
Judge Mejia,
Yes.
Jennifer Mylenik,
Yes.
Tina Qualls,
Yes.
Mark Regals,
Yes.
Sheriff Sickler,
Yes.
and Rita Sullivan.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Joe, thanks for your presentation today.
Yep. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Next up on our agenda, I'm really excited to introduce the Pathfinder Network and their presenters today. About a couple years ago, we started talking about what it would mean to really have a community corrections interface that was driven by people with lived experience, people who had skills around engagement, skill building, resource navigation, and more than anything, just helping people kind of traumatize the community corrections experience and make it something that actually can be transformative and life-changing. And so the Pathfinder Network were awarded as a result of an RFP that was submitted about a year ago, and they're fully up and running. They've been seeing folks, and even in this COVID era, the number of lives they've managed to touch already is inspiring, and also kind of gives pause as we start to ramp up services and see more people in our lobby. There are people who are really hungry for this service, so we're really lucky to have them here. Today we have the Interim Executive Director, Leticia Longoria Navarro, who I believe is a national expert on this type of work and who has dedicated countless hours to our county and what it means to implement this. We also have Dustin Furtado, the Peer Support Program Manager, Tiffany Atkinson, the CRM Lead Programs or Peer Support Specialist, both of whom have been working in our community for quite some time. And then Pat Schreiner, a statewide expert who's worked with community corrections for a long time. Pat, I believe, worked with Danny back when Danny Jordan was a community corrections director, to put some context into his experience. We're also very lucky that this program is really set up to work, or at least I'm selfishly lucky, to work almost exclusively the way they have it set up currently with community corrections. And there's plans to expand that. But first and foremost, we wanted to make sure that this served the community corrections population that we work with here in our county. So I'm going to turn it over to Leticia, and I'm just excited that you guys are here to present. So thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Guyer and members of the Coordinating Council. We're very excited to be here today to discuss the work that we're doing in collaboration with Jackson County and specifically Community Justice. So Chair Guyer already introduced us. I'm Leticia. Dustin, if you could just wave your hand. Many of you may know Dustin, and we have Tiffany, if you could wave, and then Pat as well, if you could wave hello. So we're excited to talk about, our program that we've launched in collaboration, but first talking a little bit about our belief in the power and utility of peer support. So I want to just talk globally about this first. So when we think about, engaging from a behavioral health perspective and partnering with our community safety partners, we think about what do we know leads to success when we have goals like behavior change and helping people, change their lives in ways that lead to things like civic engagement and self-actualization, long-term wellness. We know that there's a bunch of different factors. And so this is a particular set of data that talks about some of the things that we know. And you'll see here that about 40% of the factor here is determined by just individual factors. That person's, maybe risk need, responsivity factors, their family composition, their maybe history with the criminal justice system or other systems. We also know that about 30% of the equation is determined by the working relationship with the helper. And we know that there's different relationships with helpers that they're having. There's parole and probation officers, there's maybe case managers that they're interacting with in community-based organizations. And so we're looking at what does the quality of that relationship look like? What's the capacity for that relationship to be transformational? And how does it affect change with the individual? We also know that the intervention types that we choose make an impact. So, utilizing evidence-based practices or best practices, thinking about holistic interventions that are, whole person centered. Are they individual interventions? Are they group interventions? Are they a mix of the two? And then the last piece is really hope and expectation. And that oftentimes comes out of this relational interaction with a system or a program or a partner where their strengths and abilities and accomplishments and progress are being lifted up, and we're able to create greater levels of hope and just a better set of expectations for themselves as an individual, and better expectations for their future. So we know that when we're in helping roles, either as individuals or programs or even as a system, what we do and how we do it matters. So when we think about engaging with community justice clients to be in the supportive role as an organization, we know that we can't always interact and change individual factors quickly. We have to engage first and build relationship, but we do have obviously some power to change those factors through interventions and other programming. We also can absolutely impact the kind of working relationships that people experience, the kind of interventions that they engage with, and then the kind of just spaces that we create for people to be inspired and to be hopeful. So when we thought about our collaboration with Jackson County, we thought about these factors, and we thought about how do we design a space where all of these things can come together in a way to create the greatest chance of change and also hope. So given that background, the other piece that we're pulling in here are just some quotes from folks that we've worked with about their experience with peer support. So this was from Melody, and she said, "Because of peer support, I am alive." So from, what's the definition of peer support? Everybody has their own definition and how they see it fit within the larger system, right, of behavioral health or criminal justice. This is kind of our working definition. So we talk about peer support encompassing a range of different activities and interactions between someone who has lived experience and someone who is currently experiencing the system. This mutuality is created. We oftentimes call it peerness between the helper and the person being supported that really promotes things like connection and hope and really just fosters change. Peer support offers a level of acceptance, understanding, and validation that isn't always found in other professional relationships, where there's things like conditions or authority or even just how people look, right, that can create a different level of relatability or even relevance to the person's experience. So they have this really unique ability, and they're really well positioned based on their lived experiences to create really transformative relationships and interactions. And by sharing that lived experience, coupled with things like practical guidance, good training, good peer support, they're able to help people develop their own goals, think about strategies for reaching those goals, ways to become more empowered, thinking about the concrete steps that are required and needed to build, not just only build their way out of their experience or their connection with the criminal justice system, but with building more fulfilling, self-determined lives that are able to be self-directed moving forward. So this is our kind of working definition, this really unique relationship where we take the best experiences that people have had themselves with the criminal justice system, couple it with training and support, collaboration with the system and other important partners, and then walking alongside peers in the system to be able to accomplish these goals, behavior change goals, personal goals that they have. So some of, Steve, yes, of course. This is a quote from Steve. Steve said, "When I need someone to walk beside me, peer support was there." So if I were to define some of the bullet points of what a peer support role looks like, here are some of the, I think, most important. One, first and foremost, is inspiring hope that people like them can change, that they can recover, and that they can have similar experiences than with a peer support individual that they're working with. They walk alongside people on their journey towards change or recovery or whatever goal they may have. They help dispel myths and break down barriers with their experience with the system, but also just with about anything that they're navigating in their transition or in their experience with criminal justice or other systems. They share information and link people to tools and resources. So these are the folks that know exactly where to go when you need to get, a pair of boots or sign up for housing. They know because they've had that experience. They've navigated those resources themselves. They support people in identifying goals, figuring out what their hopes and dreams are, their plans for how to reach those goals, and really a roadmap for the way forward. And not just a roadmap for completing supervision, but even beyond that, how not to come back to the system and the other things that they want to be parents, members of sports teams, all those other things that might be important and healthy as they, engage in the world moving forward in their life. And then another important thing that they do is they collaborate with system partners. So they're collaborating with POs, mental health providers, case managers, housing professionals to really wrap around peers and support them. When we think about peer support in a long term, if we've stretched the game out a little bit, right, we move from just sometimes looking at what's right ahead of us to looking at and beyond kind of like what are the symptoms that we want to mitigate or eliminate, or what are the challenges or barriers, but how do we help them get to a place of self-actualization, of being engaged in the community, having civic engagement even, and overall just wellness and well-being. So these are some of the core components of what we like to see happening in this peer relationship that can be so transformational. This is a quote from Jean. Jean said, "Peer support allow me to," oh, my screen is cutting me off, "to feel normal." So what are some of the emerging, what does some of the emerging research say about peer support? I'm going to present just some research and outcomes that talk about peer support across a bunch of different settings. So we have seen peer support obviously in criminal justice settings, mental health settings, hospital settings, all different kinds of settings. So there's some mixed outcomes here in terms of where these show up, but the literature is pretty clear that these are general outcomes for peer support relationships and impacts. So as a result of engaging in peer support relationships, we see peers experiencing things like increased self-esteem and confidence, increased sense of control and ability to bring out changes in their life, feeling more empowered and reporting that on things like surveys and scales, an increased sense that treatment is responsive and inclusive to their needs. So their perceptions and attitudes and ideas about treatment changing and being more positive. We also see an increased sense of hope and inspiration, which we know is really important to change and recovery processes. We see increased empathy and acceptance in the community, but also amongst each other and in the peer support relationship and other helping relationships, as well as increased engagement in self-care and wellness. So people are moving beyond like criminogenic risk factors, which are really important, but to also looking at, what are the wellness things that I'm going to integrate in my life to keep myself and my family healthy and thriving. Increased social support and social functioning. So, being able to identify the social skills that they use in situations that are troublesome or risky for them, and being able to navigate social situations more effectively, engage in their world and communicate the community more effectively. Here's some others. Let's see what else we have here. Decreased psychotic symptoms, reduced hospital admission rates and longer community tenure. So less occurrences of hospital admission, decreased substance use and depression, improved relationship with treatment providers, increased treatment retention, increased satisfaction with overall treatment experience. So we see a lot of just differences in the way that people experience treatment, specifically when peer support is a part of the equation. Improved access to social supports. So just connecting to communities that are supportive, activities that are supportive, places to go that are supportive and encouraging. Greater housing stability, decreased criminal justice involvement, decreased emergency service utilization, reduced relapse rates, reduced rehospitalization rates, right? And these are just naming a few, some of the outcomes that stick out in the research and literature that's available. So we know that it's just really important, a part of our work as criminal justice stakeholders. And it just has the ability to be so transformational. And some of the rest of my team will talk about what that actually looks like in action. So all of these things considered, this new partnership that we have with Jackson County Community Justice has resulted in us launching a new program, the Resilience and Recovery Project. And before I talk about that, I want to read Karina's quote. Karina said, "When I saw that other people recover, it gave me hope that I could too." So I'm so excited to talk about it. I started talking about it before the slide came up. So our partnership in developing the Resilience and Recovery Project, which is a peer support program for justice-involved individuals and currently engaging with Jackson County Community Justice. We believe that it is a very cutting-edge, integrated program that includes, these wonderful professionals with lived experience. We've provided opportunities to receive, extensive advanced training on evidence-based models, trauma-informed, resiliency-focused, kind of all the things that we know in a really integrated way to support community justice and the important work that they're doing with these individuals. So I'm going to pass it over to Dustin. He's our program manager, to talk about the project itself and what we do and how we do it.
Just really excited to be here and talk about the Resilience and Recovery Project and, kind of what we've been doing so far. It's been an experience. We've been going for about 4 weeks now. And we've done an extensive training before that with our new staff. And gosh, the response has just been amazing. And getting to work with the justice involved individuals right now and watch the team work is an amazing thing. And Leticia had a really elegant way of putting together what peer work is. But we're going to talk a little bit about the work that we specifically do here. So our goal in the Resilience and Recovery Project is not to force or tell people what to do. It's really to walk alongside people. We really want to come alongside these justice-involved individuals to build individual, social, and community resources to promote long-term resilience and recovery and have successful completion on supervision. But not only that, also getting back into the community and really engaging in positive social supports and carrying this thing on long after and being a support for them afterwards as well. We have a lot of peers with lived experience. Everyone on our team has lived experience in the criminal justice system, and we engage participants in really goal-oriented collaborative relationship. We provide support for them and group. We have all individual support and group support for them. We're actually starting our group supports today, which is really amazing. We've got enough referrals to do that, and this week should be really good. So we work together to reinforce successes and build self-efficacy, hope, and resilience. Whether it's a one-time service or a short or long-term service, we really. I heard the last presenter talk about, the strengths-based approach that Juvenile is using, and we really use that strengths-based approach to let people dictate what their goals are and how we can support them to get there. So we have a number of different types of supports at the R&R project. we have ongoing wraparound for basically medium to high risk individuals. And it's more of the high needs, need connection with resources, really need a big wraparound support. And we do that. Each of our peers carries a caseload of 15. But we also have drop-in services where anybody on parole and probation can come in if they might have just one thing that they're looking for. Hey, I want to get into an Oxford house. Hey, tell me more about the groups that you have. We have drop-in services for those people so they can get engaged with us regardless of what the risk level is and have more positive outcomes. We also have support out at the transition center, which I'm really excited about. We get to go out there in the evenings, and in the first few weeks here, we've just been going out and building relationships and mingling with people and getting to know the staff, and really just talking to people about what they want to do with their life. And ongoing, we're going to have those group supports with these really great evidence-based curriculums that Leticia was talking about, that people can engage in out at the transition center. So it's a really awesome opportunity to be out there. And we have basic needs support. We have some money in our grant for incentives for clients, and just to help support their basic needs to get going in life. So services for the participants are, we have cognitive groups, talked about that a little bit. We want to develop people's resilience and recovery. We'll talk about our capital scale and our action plan here in a minute. And we also have just peer support groups, like support groups and groups where we can just work on action plan, work on goals that aren't necessarily super curriculum specific. And we're gonna be putting on some peer support events. We've been talking about that in the last couple of days, and we're really excited to do some community events and get some awareness out there for the Pathfinder Network and what we're trying to do with justice involved individuals. And we have this beautiful, within all that, the curriculums that we have and what we're trying to do in individual sessions with people, we have this beautiful communication model that we've been training in, and a few of us that are in this meeting actually have been going through the training process to be a trainer of it. And it's just a new way to communicate with people in a positive manner that really invokes a decision-making process within themselves that we can support. It's an evidence-based trauma and resiliency informed communication model, enables us to interact with these justice-involved individuals more effectively, and just create a safe space for them to be more productive and increase positive outcomes. It helps us, like the first part of this model is creating regulation within ourselves, because like before getting into this model, I never thought about like the creating regulation within myself first. And what the stance that I have to take, it was always like, okay, what do we need to do? What's the plan? This is what we need to do. And CR2 really cuts through that to like has me ask myself first, what do I need to do first before I meet with this person? Am I regulated? It's cutting edge and designed specifically to enhance in the moment interactions. And there are two distinct phases, regulation and resilience. Don't go to the next one. And there's two phases within this communication model. Here's kind of a graphic, but it talks about, hold on, and we pause and anticipate what's going to happen in the interaction. We elicit responses from people. We acknowledge the effort that they're putting in and what's going on for them. We review. We reflect back, so we make sure we have a good understanding of what's going on for them and what they need, and then we explore options with them, which is this beautiful thing where we've done the acknowledging and really let people know that we're listening to them, but then we go into this explore plan of like, what do you want to do? What do you think is the best solution? And then we make a plan within that for them, and help, which helps affirm. I've had experiences in the past where like, this is what you need to do, and this is how you do it. But when we can get the client involved in making their own decisions, gosh, that just increases so much buy-in for people to go out into the community and have positive results. And then once again, we review the plan with them to make sure that we've got it all right. Yeah, and what the goals are and what we want to do. And this is kind of our process through supporting change. You know, we have this this flow chart here that really is the process within everything that we do. We begin, we clarify our role, we have our assessment tool, which is our capital scale. We normalize that experience with these people through our lived experience, because once again, we are just former justice involved individuals working with justice involved individuals. And that's a huge thing. And we use our behavioral practices and our incentive funds to help promote that. Or we go to our action plan next, and we start, that's kind of our service planning tool. If you come from the A&D world, I think of it like the R&R capital scales, the assessment and the action plan is our service plan. Then we go out and have resources and resources and referrals with the community, and we really we talk about meeting people where they're at a lot in this field. And the cool thing about what we do at the R&R project is we don't just meet them where they're at emotionally, but we meet them where they're at physically. We're stationed here within the community justice office, but for me, being a former person on probation, it wasn't always the place that I wanted to be. And so we have the ability to go out and meet people within the community and take them to these resources to get them connected one-on-one, which is a really awesome thing. And we also have this beautiful resource center here in the lobby that has where Jasmine works, and it's like if we have connections we can make there, gosh, we're going to take them right over there and get them connected. And we teach cognitive skills groups. People get involved in groups with us, and then we just collaborate with people, and we track all this stuff through our documentation, and we have we're working on pulling our first monthly reports for this stuff, and documentation is really important. We review progress, and then we will assess the impact, and then we have at the end we have another capital scale that we do that can say where has somebody improved in their recovery capital, where have we helped them, and then we have an ending, and it's up to, and there's no real limit on times of caseloads. We reassess and reassess until that person has what they need to move on and go engage in the community. This is just an example of our capital scale, and it's really what our capital scale does for us is it just gives us an idea of what where the person's at right now, and identifies their strengths and their recovery capital and what they have to work with right now. And we're really about identifying strengths and how can we use those strengths in order to increase their recovery capital, increase those lower numbers that they might have within the capital scale to increase their success. And then we have our action plan after that, which really is to set goals and figure out what from the capital scale, like what resources do we need to engage in within the community in order to get the goals in the action plan met. And it's a really amazing tool. It's really simplified, isn't overwhelming for people most of the time. And it's really a beautiful tool that we can work with people, that they can identify their strengths and move to the next step and really start planning for their success and recovery. And this is a quote from Lisa. Peer support has been there for me no matter what. and now I'm able to help others.
Tiffany, our lead peer support specialist, talk about what this looks like from the role of a peer. So Tiffany, take it away.
Thank you, Leticia. And like Dustin and Leticia shared, I'm just really excited to be here to be a part of this program and to be working with this population specifically right now that I feel like really just needs a lot of extra love and support, and then to be able to come alongside the probation officers and work really collaboratively with them. So I know that Dustin and Leticia talked a lot about the processes and kind of the textbook stuff of what a peer support does. And so I thought that I would just share some examples of like, okay, what does that look like? So we get to come alongside them, we get to provide a resource, we give incentives, all those things. And so just a few examples from the last 30 days of being able to really start hitting the ground and working with these justice impacted individuals as well as the probation officers. Some of the successes that we've already had is we've been able to really get people to engage in a way that they haven't engaged before. We're able to go to their places of residence, whether that be on the railroad tracks, whether that be at a motel or their home, and kind of just like sit on the porch with them, have a conversation, figure out what their barriers are, what their plan is, where they would like to be. And notice I'm saying they, right? Our job is really to empower them and to give them the resources that they need to get to where they want to be in life. You know, navigating the justice system can be really daunting. And so I want to just take a moment to highlight the staff here at Community Justice and in the way that they have just grown over the years. I am here with quite a few years of lived experience with the justice system and all those things. And so I've really had the opportunity to, over the years, not just being involved as an individual on supervision, but then working in the field and then coming to a place where I am now actually getting to see the day-to-day, I mean, the work that the probation staff puts into building the relationships with their clients is just so inspiring. You know, it gives me so much hope to see where the future of community justice will be. And I think that it's really great that they really took a chance with a peer-run program, right? This is like not really heard of in very many places. And there's some good and some bad to being somebody with lived experience, right? There's this negative stigma a lot of the times around addicts, around justice impacted individuals. And so we really get the opportunity to work with the probation officers that once supervised us. And man, they're just so respectful. They work so like well with us. They really do their part, and they believe in us, you know, and that's such a huge deal to be believed in. And then to how that translates into the work that we do is when I get to share with one of my peers that like, hey, I was, you know, on probation. I've been in jail. I've had it, you know, am an addict in recovery and all these things. And now they see me working at the probation office, you know, and so that's such a strong message of hope for them. Some of the things that we do, you know, like I talked about meeting them where they're at, and then kind of helping with the small things, right, that maybe we don't think about, going grocery shopping, scheduling a dentist appointment, like actually being there to make that call with them. And then basically just a lot of barrier busting. I can't say how much it helped me to have somebody with lived experience kind of navigate the system with me. I think it's so important, the work that we do, just that credibility that we have with, you know, the street cred that we have with the peers, and being able to really just be an example. Some of the stuff that's different now than when I was on supervision is really the whole interactions of the probation officers. You can tell that the training that they really get the opportunity to take has impacted them in a positive way. And it's just so, the whole vibe of the probation office is so much better. It's comfortable. I feel like people are more open to come and check in, you know, with whatever barriers they have in place. I think that also it's super helpful, the relationships that we get the opportunity to build in the community. We get to go and really just hold our peers' hand through turning in housing applications, building resumes, contacting employers, getting, you know, just anything that they may need to start work, an ID, a birth certificate. And I know that the Resource Center does a lot of that stuff too. And we can help with like the funding, you know, in some of those cases where somebody may not immediately be able to pay for an ID, which you need to get employment, and a social security card, which you need to get employment, which you need to provide for yourself and to get a home, and like all these things. So that's really my role as a peer. I really believe in the work that we do. And it's just such an honor, you know, to be able to come and work with the Community Justice Office and to work with the Pathfinder Network and to work with the peers. We're all a team. And I just think that that makes the big difference, right? We're not the dictators. We're really trying to figure out what the peers need and how we can help them get that. Yeah, I think that's all I have to share on that.
Thank you, Tiffany. I think I've been here on site the last 2 days, and it's been so cool to see. You know, we're here in the lobby of Community Justice, and this afternoon there'll be a group going on in the group room. There'll be peers in the office doing intakes. There'll be someone in the lobby kind of greeting people as they come in to be, you know, maybe one of the first people they interact with. So that's what it looks like to experience this project on site here at Community Justice. And for me, just to see that happen, you know, being a former parole and probation officer myself, is just something that this community, I think, should really be proud of, that there's this kind of wraparound and collaboration with a bunch of different partners that really care about the outcomes for justice impacted individuals. And with that, Pat, I'm going to pass it to you just to talk about your work with the program and some of the impacts and takeaways that you would like to share with the group.
Okay, I'll try to make it quick. First, I'm at a hotel in Bend, and it keeps saying my internet is unstable. So can you hear me first? Good. Okay, so first, just a quick introduction as to why I would have anything to say of any value to you is I worked in community corrections for 35 years, and then the last 3.5 years, as I've been retired, I've been training and consulting not only around the state, but around the country with Dr. Latessa's program on implementing evidence-based practices. This one is very exciting to me. And the first thing I want to highlight, because I still pay attention to what's going on in Oregon, I think Jackson County is leading the state in evolving with evidence in how they work in parole and probation. And Leticia just talked about it, Dustin talked about it, Tiffany talked about it, having this group on site. But I was down there a couple of weeks ago and it blew me away. Even the waiting room, Eric, just is so inviting. All those televisions with people talking about how you can make changes. And so I think they are leading the state and changing the culture and improving the collaboration. And obviously with the peer mentors, that's exactly what this is about. But that collaboration between the POs and the peer mentors is so important, and increases accountability. And with that accountability, it reduces recidivism, boosts public safety. And I'd like to take just a couple more minutes if that slide 18 that Dustin was going through, that the process. And I just want to highlight a couple things out of that from my experience, and then I'll close out because I know you need time for questions. I can remember about 7-8 years ago, Dr. Latessa was out visiting with us in Portland, Oregon, and we were talking about peer mentors. And Latessa challenged us. He said, well, that's great, but you can't just hire a friend. You can't just bring somebody on to be a friend. What are they actually doing with them? And when you look at the evolution of peer support and the research base that Leticia highlighted some of that at the beginning of this presentation, the peer support group is continuing to grow and use evidence and research on how they work with people. Then you take what we know is effective in working in correctional supervision, those evidence-based practices. All of these peer support folks in Jackson County have been trained in these pieces. And now what you see is, when you look at that beginning, role clarification, normative feedback, those things the POs already do. And now we go to behavioral practices, reinforcement, disapproval, which are so powerful in motivating people to change behavior, especially when you have a positive relationship. Guess what? The POs and the peer support people are both doing that, and they're doing it together in collaboration. And then if you get to those if afterwards, then you can start teaching cognitive behavioral skills. Teach people to think differently and to make better choices in risky situations. And that's the other piece that the POs and the peers are doing. And I wanted to highlight that because I've had a lot of experience teaching POs cognitive behavioral skills, but what we didn't have was this creating regulation and resiliences, which is what the peers are using. And very often what happened is the PO would teach it, the client would receive it, but neither was ready. The client wasn't regulated. They might have been emotionally upset. They might have been a little bit under the influence. But what would happen was we would force the intervention because we didn't know enough. And so with the evolution of learning, now these peers are actually relationship first, getting people ready to learn, and then they're teaching the skills. So I'm very excited about this program. As soon as I saw this, I wish we would have had this 7 years ago when we started teaching officers to use cognitive behavioral skills. It's kind of a missing piece. And the last thing I want to close with is I've worked in other jurisdictions, and when I spent 3 days with the peer mentors in Jackson County, you guys have hired some outstanding people. These are some of the most empathic, relatable, and they are just, and they work well with the POs. You have a great team that you're setting up right there. So I appreciate an opportunity to work with these folks.
That's all we have. That's what we wanted to share with you all this afternoon.
Thank you all so much for that presentation. Does anybody have any questions for Pathfinders or the peer program?
Yeah, one question. I hear you guys talking about being side by side with the POs as they go out and deal with people. Is that kind of a requirement of what you do, that it has to be you and the PO, or do you ever get out and meet people at their residence or whatever on your own?
Most of the work that we're doing out in the community is on our own. I think what Tiffany was lifting up is that we can help if there's situations out in the community that aren't happening in the office. We can just be another supportive person that might be able to say it differently or propose it in a different way. But most of the work that the peers are doing is out in the community on their own.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that was a jam-packed agenda. I want to thank Joe and thank Pathfinder Network for all presenting. We'll get back together next month, but thank you all for attending today. All right.